Now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, someone we're incredibly excited to warmly welcome to YMCA's Youth-Led Solutions Mental Health and Wellbeing Summit. Rosie Thomas has spent the last 15 years building Australia's first and biggest youth-driven movement against cyberbullying, hate, and prejudice. Having started the social business straight out of high school, Project Rocket has now impacted 500,000 young Australians. Rosie is one of Australia's youngest recipients of the Order of Australia Medal, and her work has been recognized by UNICEF and honored in Washington, D.C. with the International Award for Outstanding Achievement in Cyber Safety. Rosie serves on the global safety boards of Twitter because she is relentlessly passionate about engineering a kinder digital world. After Rosie speaks, I'll be putting some of your questions towards her, so please join me in warmly welcoming Rosie Thomas.
Hi, everybody. It is so wonderful here. I wish we're all in the same room. Definitely hanging for those days where we can do fun things and jump back on planes. But before we kick off today, I just wanted to start by acknowledging here in Australia the traditional custodian which I'm tuning into today. For me, it's the land of the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the true custodians, the traditional custodians of our land. Land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So I'm just going to kick off some slides. So bear with me a moment and we'll see if this works. Now, I can't actually see my other window. I'm just going to jump back out for a moment. And quickly, just to the tech people, could you see my slides then? I'll just wait for them to let me know. Cool, awesome, brilliant. Okay, I might even just keep it in this side panel to kick us off. But I'm so excited to be here today, and thank you so much, first of all, to Louisa and Sophia for sharing their stories. Today is World Mental Health Day. Personally, I'm a big believer that every day should be World Mental Health Day. That, you know, it's not just one day of the year that we should all be coming out and talking about not only our own mental health, and mental health is a spectrum. Sometimes we have mental ill health and sometimes we have really strong well-being, but we should be talking about it really collaboratively with each other to really encourage these conversations more broadly. But my name is Rosie and I am the co-founder of Project Rocket. That is Australia's youth-driven movement against bullying, hate and prejudice. And I'm really excited today to share with you the story really of an idea that I had when I finished high school, and how that simple idea all those years ago has now turned into Australia's youth-driven movement against bullying, hate and prejudice. So we're a national organisation that sends, probably a lot like the people that are tuning in today, into schools all over Australia to run really interactive workshops that help other young people stand up instead of standing by to hate. We also help young people re-engineer, as Louisa said at the beginning of the sesh, inclusive, respectful communities, whether that be at school or on the types of places where we can all be ourselves. So that's what Project Rocket is today, but trust me, it has not always been that way. If I really go back to the very beginning, I don't think I ever would have had the confidence or the guts to even create Project Rocket if I knew what Project Rocket was going to become. I don't think I would have had the confidence to do it back then. But back then, Project Rocket was just an idea. And to tell you the story, I'm actually going to go all the way back to the very beginning. I'm going to share this embarrassing childhood picture. Oh, that is my sister and me when we were quite little, as you can see. So this story starts with some of my earliest memories. That's me on the swing, and that other girl is my big sister. See, we've always been really close, and I think often people think that we're the same person. In fact, I don't know about lots of young people out there, but often when you hear people talk about young people, just batch in together, and you kind of don't get to stand out for all the weird and wonderful things that you are. But actually, Luce and I are really different. Luce is really shy and imaginative and introverted, and as you can probably tell by me, I'm pretty social and outgoing and extroverted. The way I describe it is that growing up, I was a bedroom door open person and Luce was a bedroom door closed person. But despite being so different, we share some really strong values like fairness, social justice, and kindness. And these were all passed down to us by our mum. And I remember some of my earliest memories with my mum, whenever we come home from school and say that we saw something really cool at school, our mum always asked us the same thing. And it was always, well, what are you going to do about it? And I guess like fast forward to my years in high school, and you know what? I didn't always do something about it. I remember the times at school when I saw things that I didn't like. And I don't know about you, maybe you've seen something just today that you didn't like, that didn't sit well with you, that maybe it happened online or maybe it happened in your own family home. I remember my days at school times when I saw people treated awfully, like people being laughed at or labeled or judged. Or I remember even this one guy that I went to school with eventually just was treated like he didn't even exist. Like people just ignored him completely. Now, I wasn't like all humans, I've done stuff that I'm not proud of. I know what it's like to be bullied. I know what it's like to feel isolated and alone. If I'm honest, I also know what it's like to go along with a group, even agree with what's going on. And at those times though at school, and I don't know if you've got a little voice, if you have a voice in your head, I want to know what it says. But mine was that voice that my mum asked me all those years ago. It was, what are you going to do about it? So when I finished high school, I looked around and I saw that no one was doing anything issue of bullying in a way that actually reached young people. And at the time, there were no anti-bullying programs in schools. But we realized that someone really needed to do something about the issue of bullying in a way that really reached young people. And then we decided that maybe we could be those somebodies. And so back then we came up with a new vision for what we wanted to see at school, what we wanted to see in the world. And this was it, that we believe in a world where kindness and respect thrive over bullying, hate, and prejudice, and every young person is free to realize their potential. I know now as like an anti-bullying or cyberbullying expert that trauma from bullying lasts so much longer than just school. I think we know that. We know it's linked to, drug and alcohol abuse, homelessness, or suicidal ideation, poor mental health. But back then, I just saw bullying destroy the lives of my peers. I saw the way it smothered their development, extinguished their opportunity, and basically made people hide who they were from other people. And you know what? Then, do you know what the qualification was for starting a business on an anti-bullying project, essentially? The only qualification I needed back then was that I was a young person. I had an understanding of the issue, of how it affected me and my peers, and I had an idea or a vision, if you like, for how we could tackle the problem. And that was the only qualification we needed. So I guess what started small back then as just a community project set up by two young people took off eventually. We started young, passionate people, diverse people into schools all over the country to have the kind of conversations that I didn't get to have when I was at school. So, starting to ask those big questions like, how do we expect young people to stand up? You don't know what they stand for. Because I remember thinking at the time when I was a young person at school that no one was actually asking me who I was. No one actually seemed to care, or that the adults that were coming into our school to try and teach us to do the right thing, it kind of seemed to miss the point for me. I wanted to find out what my values were and really stood for in order to really make a stand. So I guess, fast forward 15 years and now Project Rocket has worked with 500,000 young people all over Australia in our face-to-face workshop, in our online community as well. So we are the go-to youth cyber safety partner of Facebook and Instagram and Google and Twitter. And, we serve on those global safety advisory boards, not as spokespeople for social media. We are spokespeople for using technology. The reason why we sit on those safety boards is because we're so committed to making sure that the seat at the table is a young person sharing their idea. We can make the platform safer, kinder, to make sure that young people are really heard. And I guess, we've got to do some incredible things over the years. Just a side note, as a young person finishing high school, wanting to take on the world, but being a bit disappointed that, well, finishing high school just doesn't really seem like that. It was kind of cool to get to invent my own career and get to travel the world working with social media platforms to make them safer and kinder and more respectful. And a couple of years ago, we actually had Facebook and Instagram invest $1 million into Project Rocket to transform 10,000 students here in Australia into the first generation of digital ambassadors. So young people who are united, ready to tackle online hate when they see it happen. And we've also launched Project Rocket TV, which is our partnership with Google. And PROC TV is all about talking about the tough stuff that you don't get to talk about at school. You know, the stuff, the big questions that you have that you don't know who to go to ask for help. Like if you typed this question into Google, so a question like, how do I handle a nude picture being leaked of me? You know, you type that into Google, you might get a really dodgy response, or you might be afraid to go to an adult because you might be afraid that they're going to judge you or make the situation worse. Project Rocket TV is created by young people for young people, and they star in the episodes too, and really get to talk about things like, you know, how do you handle them? How do you support a mate who's you know, experiencing anxiety? So it has been an absolutely wild ride at Project Rocket. I must say, like, I really feel like I've got the best job on the planet, that I get to, you know, spend my days with like-minded people who are so committed and hungry to create tangible change around us, to really make sure that no matter who you are in this world, you have access to love, to acceptance, to leadership, to opportunities, and to the real opportunities to just really be yourself and express who you are. So in this last little bit, I really wanted to share with you a few, I guess, of my thoughts around how we can like really tackle cyberbullying together as a community. And I'm not going to give you lots of technological tips, okay? So tips that are awesome, they're great. So things like, you know, taking control of your online platform by blocking, you know, blocking haters, reporting hate, muting accounts, or restricting your audiences. Those are all awesome technological tips. And I encourage you to totally work out whatever platform you're hanging out on the most, whether it be TikTok or Instagram or Snap or whatever it is, get to know how to use those features to really like keep yourself safe. What I want to share with you today though is some social tips. Just three. They're three of my absolute favorites. And I guess like when I'm sharing these tips, I want you to have a think about a time, the last time perhaps that you were scrolling through your phone and you had that moment where you look down and you see something awful. Like maybe it is just people piling on other people with loads of hateful comments or embarrassing content. Or maybe it's racism, or maybe it's hate speech. And I want you to remember that moment that you see it and you have an opportunity to stop and do something or keep scrolling. Now, so much of the time, I think we keep scrolling, and it's not because we're bad people. Sometimes because we're behind a screen, we feel like we're an audience member, like we can't actually influence change. But I'm here to tell you that you can influence change, especially on social media. Literally, social media cannot exist without us. We are the creators. We are the curators, the creators of digital content. So my first tip that I want to share with you today, and I'm doing a bit of a juggle back and forth with my slides, is to use your online power for good. When we're online, we have heaps of power. We just often don't even realize it. When we're scrolling and we see that hate, we have a choice to make in the moment. The one thing that I want you to know is that, you know, we can use our strength in numbers. That chances are when you see something awful, you're not the only one who thinks it's awful. Most people agree that bullying and online hate totally sucks, but sometimes it just takes one person to stand up for others to do the same. Now, it could be tiny. You could just write the comment dislike on a photo. And then that way you're just sending a really strong message that other people can like and upvote, that you don't agree with what's going on. Okay, but what else can you do in the moment? You might not feel confident enough to, you know, intervene or say something, you know, a big long speech that you disagree. And frankly, sometimes that makes things worse. My other hot tip is to write a counter comment. It's really hard to know what to say, so you might be scared to reach out directly or stand up for someone that needs your help, but you can still do it. And by posting a counter comment, so that's essentially saying something really, really positive about the person targeted. So it could be like, hey, I reckon I love that thing that you said the other day. You got my support. It really helps to discourage the haters and support that person being targeted. And remember, sometimes it just takes one person to stand up for other people to do the same. My last hot tip, not just because it's Mental Health Day, World Mental Health Day, because we need to be thinking about this on every day, and that is reaching out. So the worst thing I'd say about being cyberbullied is feeling completely alone, but completely humiliated because it's happening in a public place. It's happening to you. The worst thing about being harassed online, is feeling all alone. So next time you see someone that is struggling, send them a private message, pick up the phone and call them, text them. They don't even need to be your friend. It could be just shooting out a private message to let them know that you disagree with the way that they're being treated. So I guess they're just a few of my, 3 social hot tips that you can do today to really make a difference in the online world and start to re-engineer the space around us to be actually kind and empathetic and call out hate when we see it happen. The last thing that I want to share with everybody today is, I guess, my rapid fire tips for being well online. I probably don't have a lot of time, so instead, I'm going to put up this slide, and what I want you to do is, if you've got a notebook or a post-it in front of you, I want you to pick one of these tips that you're going to work on to stay mentally healthy for the next week. They might not all jump out to you as relevant, but I want you to pick one that you're going to do for the next week, and I want you to bring it into your life as a ritual. And I want you to notice how your mental health changes throughout that time. So the first one is letting go of likes. We post something, we hang around, we really want to see if it gets traction and we get that, that reward, I guess. Give yourself an hour, and then come back and then see if that makes any difference. Shut down unhealthy comparisons. We all compare ourselves to other people's highlight reels. All of their best moments, we're comparing to our lowest. Remember that. Get the stress out of your head. So rather than sit here online and be completely bombarded by loads of apps and alerts and pressure, then write down, get yourself offline, go for a run and give that a crack. Last one, I'm just gonna, you can see these other ones here, but one of the ones that I'm gonna share for me personally is keeping track of your screen time. My hottest tip here is, if you notice that your battery's low, it's probably because you've been online probably a bit too much. So when I notice my battery's low, that's a really good indication for me that I'm spending too much time online, so it's time to unplug. So I guess that's just a few. I know this has been a bit of a whirlwind, but yeah, I guess the number one thing that I would just share with everybody here is that challenging hate when we see it online, offline, is so hard. But if we change nothing, then nothing will change. And if I've learned anything over the last 15 years working with 500,000 young people, building movements around the country that tackle hate and build positive, respectful communities where we can all be ourselves, then it's this. It is that we can create change. We have so much more power than we realize, and together we are stronger. So I guess that's it from me today. It's been an incredible opportunity to come together and spend this time with you on this really special day. I'd love for you to join the Project Rocket movement. We are Australia's youth-driven movement against bullying, hate and prejudice. You can find us across all social media platforms, and yeah, join the movement. So yeah, I'm happy to throw it over for questions if anyone's got anything. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rosie, for sharing your story. A few things really stood out to me, like the phrase, "What are you going to do about it?" I've been asked that by my mom many times as well, and it's definitely a question that always keeps me thinking about what I can do next and how I can help. It's also important to highlight the fact that you said that we're never too young to make change. Starting Project Rocket out of high school, that's something that is definitely intimidating, but it's so awesome to hear that your story stemmed from such a young age. I'm going to throw it over to a few questions. We have one question from Emmanuel in France. What challenges did you face working with the social media companies and platforms?
Hey, Emmanuel. Bonjour. What challenges have we faced working with social media platforms? I reckon one of the biggest challenges we face is that the groups that we work with are global. So we get to work with incredible, digital activists in Pakistan, all the way through to, North America, through to the South Asian Pacific. But the really interesting thing is culturally, we all come from really, really different backgrounds. And so you take an example like nudity. Some cultures, love expressing themselves through nudity. Here in Australia, it's something that I think people are really behind. But there are other cultures that, as a global company in as Facebook is, for example, has to create these community standards that can fit all over the world. So I think one of the challenges is us really wanting to create change within these social media platforms, but recognizing that all of the things that we're advocating for young people have to be able to fit in different cultures throughout the world. Yeah.
Thank you so much for answering Emmanuel's question. And given that Project Rocket seems to have a direct channel to Facebook, what is your view on recent news that it elevates negative content?
Yeah, I think my view on it elevating negative content, I think my view is always that it comes back down to us as the users. Yes, there are going to be algorithms out there that promote certain content, and I wouldn't say necessarily that Facebook's algorithm creates negative content. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But what I will say is that we do get to determine our own algorithms. So one of my hot tips on Mental Health Day, for example, is to follow mental health organizations, to like their content, to share their content, because you'll end up re-engineering your algorithm to be sharing more positive, more healthy stories with you. So I think we often forget the power that we have as users to be able to influence that change, but we do actually get to help rewire that algorithm for better.
Yes, I definitely agree with the algorithm. I've noticed that the more that I shift how I use social media, it definitely shifts what shows up on my social media. So thank you for that reminder. And I do have one last question from Dean. What's Project Rocket's contingency plan, advocacy based in the middle of the pandemic?
Okay, Dean, I love this question. Project Rocket's work has never been more important. We know that young people are being disproportionately impacted by COVID. Dean, here in Melbourne, Australia, where we've just broken the record for the longest city in the world in lockdown. I think we've been in lockdown for like 240 days. What that does to your mental health, to be isolated, to not be able to go to school and hang out with your friends, to have to only connect through a screen has been so hard. And the statistics here really show it. So for us, digital has always been really powerful. We actually created here in Australia the first online platform designed by young people for young people that houses a whole bunch of digital workshops on a whole bunch of different issues that can be accessed anywhere with an internet connection. So I don't think we can beat face to face, but it's pretty cool that we're able to leverage technology to scale. And it also means that we can get into corners of the country here in Australia that are really hard to get to. You might have heard, for those not in Australia, that we live in an enormous island. It's a huge continent. It would take, I think there's like 4,000 kilometers from one side of the country to the other. I'm not sure, I could be lying. But so digital has been so important for us to really make sure that, yeah, no matter where you are located in our country, you can access community and you can access the kind of education to make sure that you're really prepared for the best of times and also the worst of times as well.
Thank you so much, Rosie, for answering that last question from Dean. And thank you again for sharing your story. You can find more about Rosie's work at projectrocket.com.au. Don't forget to share your highlights and experiences from the summit today, tagging @WorldYMCA across your